All right, teammates. We are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back. For more to my regular listeners, you know what goes down when you hit the play button here. Whatever you're going through, whatever challenges, whatever obstacles, whatever barriers you may be feeling or going that you may be going that are in your way, we are here to indirectly tell you you are not going through it alone. There's always someone out there that you can reach out to. There's always resources. There's things you can be doing to get through these tough times. Today, and you may not believe it or not, but this is actually the first time I'm having a conversation with this lady, even though I feel like in another life we were friends. We knew each other. We went to the same college. You know, I grew up in Maryland, spent a lot of time in New York. She grew up in Long Island. My first school, and I made sure I held this before we started recording, but the first school I went to, Madeline, was Carson Newman in Jefferson City, Tennessee. So we go to Knoxville all the time and party, and now you're doing the thing in Knoxville. So, you know, there's a lot of synergy between us, and that's the great thing about people who are striving and are trying to become the best versions of themselves. And also, not only that, she's UPW, a fellow UPW, fellow firewalker as well. So Madeline Blom, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
Now, as I mentioned in that intro, there's a lot. You have a whole lot of things. Now, I am maybe one of the few people that you know that has seen Long Island and seen Knoxville, Tennessee, and have lived in both places. And, you know, for you, there's a lot of different things. And one of the things where I kind of want to start here is kind of just speak a little bit about your upbringing, because one of the things that actually intrigued me as I was getting ready for this is you went to Stony Brook actually wanting to be an educator. And I'm currently an educator now out here in the school in Palm Beach. And when it comes to that core, and I say this all the time, I tell people all the time, everybody's a teacher, everybody's an educator, no matter what you do in life. But can you kind of take us back to that period in your life where, you know, you're kind of going through the school system and then, you know, you're picking being a teacher, but then all of a sudden something, you know, changes for you and obviously you go in a different route.
Yeah. So I grew up in the hood in Long Island, come from immigrant parents. Neither one of them really spoke the language.
What was the nationality?
My mother's Colombian and my father's from Venezuela.
There you go. There you go. You know, it's
Yeah.
out here in South Florida. It's a lot of New Yorkers, so it's a lot of that. And I remember being in Stony Brook, and I can kind of feel it on you. I feel it. I take me back to my undergraduate years, boy. I'm telling you, those are some good times.
Yeah. So I grew up with a lot of the Hispanic,
Yeah.
Latino culture.
Yeah.
My parents are to this day, my inspiration because of their resilience and their perseverance and then everything they've gone through to raise my brother and I. But it was hard growing up. My parents, like I said, didn't speak the language. We didn't have a car, so there was a lot of relying on other people and themselves, right? Taking public transportation. And so I am one of two. I have a younger brother. He's 3 years younger than me. English was my first Spanish was my first language. I learned English in kindergarten.
Okay.
So I didn't have the preschool experience that a lot of these kids, today have. I was just not immersed in like the American culture. Okay. So for me, I always felt that I had to work harder just because I felt like I had to understand the world around me. It was just very different.
Right.
And growing up, I saw the struggle that my brother had.
But your brother was 3 years younger than you or older?
My brother is, yes, he's 3 years younger than me. And he went through the system. Like I said, I grew up in an impoverished community. Socioeconomically, it was low, but our teachers loved us, right? And that is one of the reasons why I went back and gave, because I saw the people that believed and gave in me. They believed so much and gave so much to me and really fuel that fire that said, you know what, Madeline, like you can do it.
Yeah.
If you want to become someone, the environment that you're in doesn't mean that it defines who you are.
Yeah. Tupac famously has, I love the rose that grew from concrete, that poem that he has. And when you get a situation like what you're describing, the culture there, and I've been on both sides. I've seen schools that are in really, really rough areas, and I've done workshops in schools that are really in really very affluent communities, and you see the difference. The people are going to make it the difference. The people that have to work there, that's all they got. And when they see young people like you that are actually trying, that's the key though. All right, and this is for you listeners. Just so you guys know, and you guys are used to this in this show, a lot of gems being dropped. So make sure you're tuning in. but whatever the situation is, make sure you understand it's the people and the relationships that's going to allow the younger people to really believe in themselves and have the confidence to do a lot of the things that you're going to be describing.
Absolutely, 100%. And so I felt that I needed to give back because I knew that there were kids like myself.
Yes.
You know, we were smart. We didn't have a whole lot of direction, and not because my parents didn't want to, right? Like my parents were hard workers. They were just trying to survive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm so thankful that I had such great instrumental people in my life to help and guide me. Now, don't get it twisted. Was I veering down the wrong path and doing things that I probably shouldn't have once I reached high school? Yeah. You know, it's like you're just hanging out with the wrong crowds. But thankfully, I had people that were able to pull me in and say, hey, listen, you can do better. There's better out there for you.
Now, what kind of, and I'm glad you brought this up because my mother actually went to high school in Brooklyn. And one of the things that she would tell my sister and I all the time is when she got to a point where she wanted to have me and her, she wanted to move us out there, move us out of Brooklyn and move to Maryland. And that's kind of what made it. So I grew up north, and there was that disposition. When you're talking about your high school years and you not being focused and focusing on the wrong crowd, can you go into detail a little bit about what were the things that pulled you back into the right situation? Because that's a place where a lot of people lose a lot. They lose it right there. That those 4 years are incredibly challenging. And again, I'm very familiar with the environment that you're talking about, but it's very challenging to really, get your footing in high school. A lot of people lose their way there.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I really feel that it's super important for parents to talk to their children about all sorts of things. You know, unfortunately, my parents didn't talk to me about things like sex, talk to me about like hanging out with the wrong crowds and all of these different things. I mean, they spoke to me in the sense that my mother would say, you're not going anywhere. You know, so I grew up very sheltered. And so what happened was when you raise a child like that, guess where they're going to go and break free?
Yeah. Yeah.
During school. And guess what they're doing? They're not going to school. They're going to start cutting classes, hanging out with the wrong kids.
Right.
And so I, as a mother of 3 kids today, make it a point to explain to my children why things are the way they are, why we're not doing certain things. Okay. Communication is number 1. You know, girls were hanging out with the boys, getting knocked up.
Yep.
You know, boys are, it's the hood, you know, they want to make money, they want to make quick money, kids are selling drugs. And when, you know, kids are starting to smoke weed, you know, when I was growing up, weed was like the drug.
Yeah.
You know, today it's like a completely different world. But that was the drug that people were doing. But you know what? It really made kids very unfocused. And so I was in all like Regents classes, you know, because in New York, it was either like the regular classes and then you had the Regents classes. Right. And it was just, you know, more advanced type of classes you were taking. And so I had a math teacher, again, an angel that I had. I feel that I've always had angels in my path trying to lead me in the right direction. And thankfully, I was open enough to say, and wise enough. I was always a very wise child from a young age to say, you know what? This isn't right, right? Like it's fun in the moment, but this is not my future. And so he pulled me in and he said, hey, listen, Madeline, I noticed that you're now going from your Regents classes to, you know, your regular classes, you're getting demoted. And he said, where are you going in life? Are you going to college? What college are you going to? And I had no direction. Again, not because my parents didn't want to help me. They just didn't know. They just didn't know. So I had to do a lot of the finding by myself and with the guidance of a guidance counselor. And you know, this one particular teacher, his name was Mr. Farrell. He was definitely an angel to me. And so that was like, okay, you know what? Yeah, you're right. I got back on track, started going to classes, doing my homework, and I wound up graduating from a private school in Long Island called Dowling College, cum laude, with a 4.98, 3.98 GPA.
Unbelievable. Shout out to the team.
Yeah, with the degree,
I love
double major in education, regular education and special ed.
Yeah, you got to shout out the teachers, and it's so important that we see that we recognize these. It's kind of like a wide eye thing, and this is what I actually look for now as a teacher, as I'm on this side of it, is when you see the kid that really wants to learn, and they're just they have this disposition, they have this look in their eyes that, look, Mr. Oswin, I really want to learn this, and they're asking questions. those are the kids that really make my day. And as you're talking, I'm thinking of that was you and the younger version, and you're out there getting it. And now look at you, 4.9, and you're at,
Well,
you're
3.98 because it was like a
3.98,
4.98.
excuse
Yeah.
me. Woof, okay. All right, so that goes on. And so talk to us about your years as a Seawolf. So did you immediately go to Stony Brook, and what were the trials and tribulations when you went there?
So again, I grew up very sheltered, right? So I unfortunately didn't live like the college life.
You were a commuter, weren't you?
I was a
Yeah,
commuter.
yeah, you were one of those that we could not stand. Like me and my boys all the time, because we'd be coming back on the weekend, not having much fun, and then Sunday you guys come back to kids. Like, would you guys stay on campus so you could party with us, man? We were
I
all the time. So
know.
yeah, you were one of the
So
computers,
it's funny, I don't have like these amazing wild
Right,
college party days. I mean, maybe
right.
I went to a couple, but again, my mother, listen, let me tell you something. At 19 years old, my mother was still trying to keep me on a leash. And then
Yeah, you
finally I
guys
said,
right there.
Mommy,
Right.
I'm driving, I'm working, I'm in school, like let
Yeah.
me be.
Yes. Yeah, I already know. You don't have to go any further because me and my boys would always talk about that. But all right, so just so describe the transition though, because again, I'm assuming now you graduate undergrads and you want to get into teaching, but somehow you land as like a realtor in sales. How does that happen?
Listen, let me tell you something. I have an incredible story to share, and my
Yeah, good.
journey is really one of success. All my
Mhm.
friends back home, I was a teacher for 14 years,
At
okay?
the
In
college
Long Island.
in Long Island, like
In
elementary,
Long Island. Guess where I was teaching? Guess where I went back to teach?
not at the school you went
The
to.
community that I grew
Mhm.
up in.
There you go, right there, right where you went
I
right.
went back. I grew up in Brentwood, New York.
Oh yeah,
I
Yeah, yeah,
I grew up in Brentwood, New York, the hood.
yeah. They used to tell me all about
And
Brentwood.
listen, I have so many wonderful, great memories of Brentwood,
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah,
but it was rough. The stuff that we saw as kids, it was rough.
yeah,
And so I graduated at 21.
yes.
I did my student teaching back in the community that I grew up in
Hmm.
one of the middle schools that I went to. A lot of the teachers knew who I was. They were my teachers. I
Yeah,
was their student. It was such a special
yeah,
time.
absolutely.
And yeah, and so I got a job right away. During that time, the baby boomers were retiring, so it was so easy for me to get a job.
Right.
So at 21 years old, I'm making $38,000 with a bachelor's degree.
Yes.
And then shortly after that, 3 years later, I went and got my master's from Stony Brook
I'm
University.
Stony Brook, right.
And
And
so I taught
okay,
for 14 years.
right.
I met my husband at like year 10.
Hmm.
And at that time,
Was he teaching too?
no. So he was not a teacher. He is from Kings Park. He's in
Hmm.
a family business. We met through a friend.
Okay.
It's so funny how people always say, how you meet your partner. I was dating all the wrong guys.
If we were to start that conversation, I'd keep you on
We've
your
all
phone.
been
Yeah.
there.
If we were to start that, especially if you're taking me back to my Stony Brook years. Now, a lot of it was my fault, so I'm not blaming you ladies out there because I was a different kind of cat back out. I was a football player there, so I was
Yeah.
in that in that world. But yeah, I understand. I understand that environment for sure.
Meeting all the wrong guys, dating all
Mhm.
the wrong guys. Finally, I said, you know what? The hell with this. I'm just going to be by myself. I'm over
Mhm.
here trying to date these guys and I'm trying to change and mold. And then, we can talk about my own trauma that I had.
Exactly. And the thing is, what I'm learning too, being a teacher, I mean, we can joke about it, but it is actually very important because we're dealing with kids all day. You can't have no
Yes.
bullshit people around you. I mean, the support that you need on a daily basis, you're handling children and their families. You can't, I mean, I say it all the time whenever, colleagues try to set me up. I can't have bullshit around me, man. I have too much influence on these kids and their parents where the expectation and the standard being around them, it just increases every single day because you see how much of an effect you're having on them. So I feel you, man. You don't got, you can say less when it comes to that.
Yeah. And so we started, I met my husband through a friend. We started hanging out. I had a list A through Z about,
Mhm.
who I was trying to date and hang
Right.
out with and spend my
Mhm.
time with. And I
Right.
have to say, I found an incredible partner who I'm still married to today. I have 3 beautiful children.
Yes.
And so he said, once we had our first baby, we got married, had our first baby. He said, Madeline, I'd like for you to be a stay-at-home mom. And I
Really?
looked at
Yeah.
him and I said, how am I going to be a stay-at-home mom living on Long Island?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like we were both bringing the same amount of income.
Yeah.
And so I had to really make a choice when I got pregnant with my daughter, my second child. I had to make the decision, do I leave and try to start a life somewhere else? Because right now I have the opportunity. If you know, in New York, you have 2 years maternity leave.
Okay. I didn't know that. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
teachers in New York have up to 2 years maternity leave where, they're guaranteed a position,
Mhm.
but you're not necessarily, you don't necessarily know where, but I was guaranteed a position. So I said, you know what, I'm going to take a chance.
Okay. So
Here I
this
am.
during those 2 years that you decided to venture into other things.
And then when I got pregnant and when I made the decision that I was going to go try something else, that is when we decided to move to Knoxville,
Mhm.
Tennessee.
But what was it about Knoxville? Was it something that happened business wise that kind of gave you the go for?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We had visited the Nashville area maybe like 8 years prior
Mm-hmm.
to no, maybe 5 years prior to us deciding to move. Okay.
Right.
We decided that Nashville was just a little bit too expensive, so we decided to go east and
Yeah.
we came to like the Knoxville area. We didn't necessarily specifically come to Knoxville. We were about 45 minutes from Knoxville. And what was the catalyst to that decision was we decided to move the family business. My
Yeah.
husband is in the aviation industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided that that's where we were going to be. Taxes in Tennessee are extremely low. It is a no state income tax. So there were a lot of incentives for a business to come to the area.
Got it. That makes sense. And that's actually another great lesson for the listeners out there as well, is when you do consider a relocation, you do have to do your homework. You do have to make sure you're making these moves and you're not just blindly chasing it and going places, because that is going to be a very, very lonely ride for you. So on that note, when it comes to being a realtor and the things you do now, you got to understand how important sales is, and making sure that you're working with your clients. One of the things that I read on your website is that you make sure your clients are happy and that you make sure that they're taken care of. So walk us through when you get to Tennessee, when you finally land in Knoxville, and then you decide, hey, I'm not going back to teaching, or did you just decide, all right, I'm going to go to realty and stuff like that? What was that process like?
So when I moved, I became a mother. So I was a mom for about 6 months. And
Now, this was
the
the second one or the first one?
That was my second one.
The
So I
second
had my
one.
first in New York. I was pregnant with my second when I decided to move. Had
Right.
my second here. And I
Mhm.
have to tell you, being a career woman and having my own shit at 21, excuse my language, to
Yeah,
not
it's fine. You can cuss on.
doing anything, it was hard.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
was
when
hard.
when you weren't doing anything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
I had a career from 21.
yeah,
Now I'm 34 years old.
yeah,
And I'm just not that there's anything wrong with being a mom, right? Because I embrace the role. I mean, it's such a gift, right?
yeah,
That it's given. But
mhm,
when you're this career driven woman,
yeah.
you go to a different place. So now you said it when we first started our conversation.
Mhm.
How, I want to hear about how you went from Long Island, where you have
Yeah.
9 million people,
All right.
to a super small little rural town, because I wasn't first living in Knoxville, right?
Yeah,
So when you talk about learning about where you're going
yeah.
and doing your research, the
Mhm.
reality is we didn't do a whole lot of research, right?
Oh, right.
We knew we wanted to be by a lake. We knew that we were close to Knoxville. My husband thankfully still has the business where it is we originally moved to. But I'll
Mhm.
be honest with you, within 6 months, I realized that I was very unhappy where I was.
Hmm.
Okay. So again, here I am, this this like woman that has this like passion
Yeah,
and fire and desire to
yeah.
succeed. Failing wasn't an option for me.
1,000%.
So I said, okay, you know what, Madeline, I'm going to stop boohooing. My life isn't going to get any better, just complaining about it.
Mhm.
What can I do? And so I thought, you know what? I always wanted to sell real estate in New York, but I had 3 jobs. I was teaching full time. I was an ABA
Ah,
therapist,
I got you.
after
Yeah.
school doing 8 hours, working for the state. And
Wow.
then I love fitness. So I was teaching Zumba
Oh, no kidding. There you go.
a couple of days a week. So I was just always, it's like that New
Yeah,
York lifestyle. You're hustling and bustle, that hustle and
yeah,
bustle.
yeah.
And
Huh.
so I said, you know what? I went to my husband one day and I said, okay, I'm either having like the blues of being a mom and being alone. I'm having the blues of not making my own money and feeling validated. So guess what? I'm going to go to real estate school. I'm going to get my real estate license. We're going to sell this house and we're going to Knoxville.
Wow, that's amazing.
And so he said, you know what? Okay. Because the compromise was, listen, I gave up my career.
Yeah.
I was a vested teacher.
Yeah. 14 years. That, I mean,
14
14
years.
years of teaching.
You
And
know,
I
at
didn't
that
even know
time,
that. I mean,
yeah.
between Zumba therapy, this was something you worked your ass off to do. And then you're in the school that you grew up in. You know, this is very rewarding. I'm 1000% sure you cried that last day when you had to leave those kids, because this was like you leaving yourself and go to where? Tennessee, a place where I mean, and what city was it when you first got there?
So I moved to a very small town called Rockwood. I think there's about like 50,
Rutledge,
like,
yeah, Rutledge. Yeah, I heard of Rutledge.
no,
Yeah.
Rockwood.
Rockwood.
There's about
I'm thinking of
55,000.
Oak Ridge. I'm thinking of
Yeah,
Oak Ridge. Yeah, I
yeah,
haven't
yeah.
heard of that one.
There's about 55,000 people that live in this area. It is a very small area.
Yeah, and then you had to build. So, all right, let's go there then, because this is almost like a new life for you at this point. So you tell your husband, look, I gave up everything and I can't take it. It's 6 months. You guys know, the lifestyle that I had before. I need to do something. When you go to real estate school, what are what are the challenges that you go through? Because now you're in a different place now. You're not starting as a 19-year-old freshman with no responsibilities. Now you have kids. You got to make sure homework. Like, what was that process like going back to the quote unquote school to get your real estate license?
It was honestly, that process was pretty easy. There was a lot of pressure put on my husband, right? Because I basically felt that I needed to take my power back. Again, it's not that he was doing anything wrong. It was more me and internally what I needed to fuel my passion and my desires, right?
And at this point, you have a daughter that you
I
got
have two
the
kids.
example and stuff like that. You
Yeah.
can't just depend on somebody.
Exactly. So was always raised, and maybe it's like that, like Latino culture, where my mother always said to me, you need to be able to depend on yourself.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, if something happens, you never want to rely on a man. You want to always be able to take care of yourself. So I grew up with that instilled in the back of my mind, which is why I hustled so hard. I worked so hard because I wanted to be independent and not rely on anyone.
Yes.
So it's a blessing and a curse, right? Because sometimes it
As
can,
everything is.
yes, you know, sometimes it can be sometimes it can be where you're like overpowering. And so I've learned that in a relationship, we are partners. And so my goal was, I said, I just want us to be able to grow our family. I want us to both be happy, right? We have to both compromise. And so I told him,
and I have to pause you there because I want to make sure the listeners know that's the way it should be, guys. That's the way it should be. All right. It should be an equal partnership, and you shouldn't be intimidated when a woman actually wants to do something better for themselves. And the real men, the real ones out there will appreciate that. So just got to make sure I make that point as well.
And you know, women expecting that from men as well. You know, I think it definitely goes both ways. I feel that a lot of times people settle. And one of the things that I refused to do after having two poor relationships, right, that I invested years into, was to settle.
Don't do it. It's not worth it.
Never settle.
Got it. That's just, again, we would go on a tangent there, but don't do it, especially being in that college environment that we talked about. So many of my friends, so many people who, I mean, even when they were in school, got someone pregnant and, just went and settled. And it was just, it's horrid. And young people are ruined because of how casual you've made sex and doing it without there being any real commitment. That is the issue. And that's something that I'm on a mission to really help fix that, because as my niece gets to 15, as my nephew is, he's getting to 13 this year, you don't want your young people, the people that you love, you don't want to leave them with a world that has that mindset.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. So for me going into real estate, the challenge was leaving my kids to my husband while he was managing a full-time business.
He was still working,
being in a family business.
Right.
And so we made it work. He said, Madeline, if this is really what you want to do, and this is what's going to give you the joy and happiness that you feel you're missing in your life.
Right.
And so we worked together. But let me tell you, it was challenging, right? Because it's like, okay, 3 weeks into it, I have my license, I'm ready to go out into the real estate world, but where am I getting business from?
Yeah, that's why I'm glad you brought that up, because now we have to talk. Could not wait to really talk about this with you. But make a move, make a move, make a move.
Right.
So you guys, if you're watching this on video, you see your hat, and then you said, are those UPW tapes right there as well behind you?
Yeah, those are the books. Yep.
This show, a lot of the things I do, the work I do was built, and the concept, the seed was kind of watered and planted when I went to an Unleash the Power Within in Miami, and I saw Tony Robbins speak. This was my first time ever seeing a motivational speaker live, and I was talking to really diehard Tony Robbins people, and they're saying he's a coach. Now, I left Stony Brook wanting to be a football coach and thinking coaching and football were the only two ways you can actually coach, or sports coaching. I didn't realize that you can actually do life coaching and help people out, just coach them throughout life. And that leads me to asking you, when you look to generate business in real estate, what was it about that event that made it so you were able to take what you learned from the event and apply it to more things? There's a lot of people that go, but you give it 2 weeks, that sugar rush kind of falls off, and they don't really pursue the things that they were going to pursue. Obviously, you were different, so.
Yeah, so I went last year to UPW, but I have been a realtor for 7 years. Okay. In those first, let's say 3 years, I wasn't doing a whole lot. I was selling real estate to family, but again, I felt that I had something that was of my own. COVID hit. And that was when, well, actually prior to COVID hitting, I had an epiphany, and I said, we've always invested in real estate, long-term rentals. Okay. Right. And I said to my husband, I think it's time we start buying real estate. And, he was scared, because now it's really, we're just living off one income.
Yeah. So instead of, I got you, buying it.
Yeah, because, real estate, when you think of real estate, I mean, there's no consistent pay, right? Like, you're a teacher, you're getting a paycheck every 2 weeks.
Right.
Real estate is very inconsistent.
Exactly.
So I decided to start deep diving and saying, okay, well, you know what? We did long-term rentals. I was kind of, you're not making a lot of money in long-term rentals. Then I started to learn about short-term rentals. Then I went down this rabbit hole because I'm an educator and I love to learn and read. And guess what? That is a whole other world that I did not know about. Today, I own 7 short-term rentals. I'm generating almost $500,000 in revenue. And at that time, during COVID, I decided that I was going to become an expert in short-term rentals, and that I was going to be an agent that sold in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. Nobody knew who I was.
Right. So talk to us a little bit about, when you say short-term rentals, is this something similar to a timeshare where people are like, how does educate us a little bit about what you mean when you kind of follow your lane in short-term rentals?
Okay. So long-term rentals is when you're renting for, a 1-year lease, 2-year lease, right? I mean, so that is what we consider passive income.
The passive, right.
Then you get into what are called midterm rentals, where you're renting a place for 2 to 3 months, a month to 2 to 3 months, right? People coming in for a contract, nurses, doctors, college students, professors. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'll be
there is a niche for that. But short-term rentals are homes that are rented for 7 or less days on average.
Really?
So think of properties that you rent when you're going on vacation and you go on Airbnb to search.
Actually, I was just about to say that. Yeah, I know people doing that.
So the platforms that I use to promote my homes that are short-term rentals, I put on Airbnb and Vrbo. I would say 80% of my business comes from Airbnb.
And these are people that are looking to come in just for the vacation and stuff, like, so you're able to attract them. I got you. There's a lot there. And I want to make sure we point out to the listeners is that it takes you focusing and cracking down on what your niche is going to be, and then really, really learning about that, because that's something you have to discover over a period of time, and you have to test it out. And then you realize, okay, if I'm going to be now, was your location, did your location play a role in that? Did you start to look at your situation, say a lot of people want to come to Knoxville for vacation? What was the thought process behind saying, all right, short-term rentals is going to be where I kind of plant my flag?
When I became a realtor, I
Mm-hmm.
sold my house in Rockwood and bought a gorgeous house in Knoxville. Okay. Today, my house has tripled in value.
Right.
So that was a really smart move to come to Knoxville because Knoxville's real estate has boomed
Mm-hmm.
since COVID. Okay. So while we were living here, I decided that I wanted to start investing in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
So you asked me how I decided to invest in a particular area. Okay. I think that for your listeners, anyone that is interested in getting into real estate and tapping into this phenomenon of
Yeah.
short-term rentals, you should start off with thinking about places that you enjoy visiting,
Yeah.
places that you enjoy
Yeah.
going to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
Start there.
Yeah.
So let me tell you my journey. My husband and I love to cruise through the roads, through the mountains
Mm-hmm.
of Tennessee. My husband owns a Porsche. He likes
Mm-hmm.
speed. I don't necessarily love that, but it's something he enjoys. So I would take
Yes.
rides with him. And
Yes.
we discovered this beautiful, like untapped, like market in the mountains of North Carolina, basically on the other side of Tennessee.
Yeah. Is that Asheville?
So our property, which is
Mm-hmm.
my first baby, my first rental,
Uh-huh.
is about an hour
From
from
Asheville.
Asheville. It is
Right.
in a little tertiary market called Robbinsville, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And I cater to, which is why I went there, we cater to people like car enthusiasts and motorcyclists that love to drive through the Tail of the Dragon. The Tail of the Dragon is
Yeah.
like a bucket list like item, okay,
Yeah.
that check off as something to do.
Oh,
It
man,
is, if
that's
you love
awesome.
speed,
Yeah.
this is for you. 318 curves in 11 miles.
Yeah. Man,
It's awesome.
yeah, that's
Not for everybody, but again, if you like speed and cars and motorcycles, this is where everybody that's into that wants to
Mhm.
go.
And when it comes to also in you saying that, it really nails down on us as I'm hearing you talking, I'm thinking about what I read about your bio, is it really boils down to you finding your client in that as well. So you knew that because again, your husband's driving a Porsche, you need the speed, and then you're like, wait a minute, that's specifically the person that we can sell on these short-term rentals and then go from there. And it takes experience. That's amazing.
Bingo,
Mhm.
bingo. So I said, and so to add to that, we went to a Porsche event. So now we needed lodging.
Yeah.
We rented a cabin in, one of the little resort areas nearby. And let me tell you something, it was 2 stars at a max. So you give a rating of 5 stars on Airbnb on the
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
I was like appalled at the fact that I was paying what I was paying. I had no internet.
Mm-hmm.
The place was dirty. There was
Right.
nothing appealing to it.
Mhm.
And so I thought, you know what? So many people come to this area, and I'm sure there's people like me. There's people that like nice things. They're driving a nice car. They're wanting nicer accommodations.
Yeah.
And so what did I do? I said, okay, ding, ding, ding. Let me look at what the competition is around. And
Mm-hmm.
when I noticed that I didn't have a lot of competition, I decided to create a space. I decided to go look at real estate, what was for sale, and my goal was to create an experience for people like me.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so that is what you call your avatar.
Yeah.
An avatar is your
Yeah.
ideal
Yeah.
guest.
Regular. I actually have a show that's dedicated to just finding your avatar. Yeah.
Yes.
It's very
So your avatar is finding your ideal guest.
hmm.
So in our research and looking, we found 11 acres with a beautiful 2-bedroom cabin with stunning views for $275,000.
Wow. That's
11 acres.
and it's through these shared experiences though, and that's what's amazing. And I want to make sure I'm re-emphasizing that point is in your story you can be doing the same thing if you have your antennas up, if you're alert to these things, and like you said, put the right people around you that are going to support you. everything is business. And if you really focus in, you'll be able to create that lifestyle for yourself. I always tell people all the time, don't go look for the perfect dream job. Go think about the perfect lifestyle that you would want. And then you'll all these things will start to become aware for you. Because you're going to this event, you're seeing certain things that aren't done the right way. And you're like, we're going to fix it. We're going to fix it. We're going to build a business.
We are. Let me tell you, the first year we were in business, we did $54,000 with that one little cabin. We grossed $54,000. I can share the listing with you.
That's
and
amazing.
Since then, I've added a tiny home to the land.
Yes.
So now I'm getting income from 2 properties.
That's amazing. And so, well, I guess now it's Powerhouse. Is that the name of it?
So I started a real estate team with my partner, Brandon. And I feel like we're kind of like skipping around a lot. But for any listeners or anybody,
because I want to make sure we
more about the story.
I'd
love to share, right? But yeah, so moving forward, fast forward, I decided to find all of the people that were doing what I wanted to do, right? So you kind of nailed it on the head. Find the people that are doing what you want to do. Why recreate the wheel?
Right.
You know what I mean? So
and especially when you knew you were able to, when you were confident enough to know exactly where you wanted to plant your flag. Now let's go work with the people that can really refine it and tool and stuff like that.
Exactly. And so I implemented those same strategies, and that's what I taught my clients, because all I sell and all I've sold for the last 4.5 years is, guess what? Short-term rentals in the Great Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. So I'm one of the top agents in this area, but I've worked really hard. I'm an educator, right? So for me, think about it, right? You go from being an educator to educating clients. It's the same thing. I have that nurturing spirit. I want to help. I want to empower. I want to teach you. I want you to, I'm vested because I want you to buy a profitable property. And I want you to tell your friends all about it, so that, guess what? They then want to buy properties with me.
So talk to us about your like, who is your ideal client then? Now that you're if you could describe, if 100 people in that room, who would you describe as your ideal person?
Investors. So investors that are high income earners that are looking to shelter for tax purposes. These are the ideal people that want to buy short-term rentals. Okay, my clients, 95% of my clients are from either the West Coast or Midwest, typically from the West Coast, 90% from the West Coast. And they're buying here in Tennessee because, again, what I talked about early on, which is why I moved here, it's a no state income tax, and our property taxes are really low. And it's a vacation market. The Smoky Mountains is a vacation market. And so it's one way to pay Uncle Sam less money.
Basically, yeah. I like.
And you're building generational wealth.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. Yeah, generational wealth is another.
You know what I mean? So it's like then we start getting into that whole conversation, and that's where it gets exciting, because we need to be talking more about this with our youth, right? I mean, I wish I knew what I knew. I wish at 19 I know what I know now. I would have made very different decisions.
So walk us through that conversation a little bit about how you have, because this is happening and your kids are obviously getting older. They're asking more questions about what you guys do. How do you approach, for anyone listening, how do you have that conversation about financial literacy with your young people? What are some of the tactics? Because I agree with you. I think it's one of the most important things that we should be teaching our young people is to be financially literate.
Absolutely. Listen, like you said it early on, right? Like we are role models. We are the first educators to the people that we, are talking to on a daily basis, right? So I am my first educator to my children. And so it starts with teaching them responsibilities, teaching them chores, talking to them about what we're talking about, right? Like casually talking about it, because it just becomes second nature to them. Exactly. My children know that they have properties in Florida, they have properties in North Carolina, Kentucky. Let's talk. They see how hard we work. They know the lingo of appreciation. You just have to immerse them. You have to talk about the value of money. I always teach my kids that money is a tool. Money is a resource. And so when you start to talk to kids about that, I read a lot of books with my kids about actually Tuttle Twins is an
Mhm.
excellent series for anyone listening out there that has small children.
Yeah.
It teaches them entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
So it's teaching them and starting them young and talking to them about real life things and
Yeah.
the power of saving, the power of a dollar and how to stretch money, all these different things. You know what I mean? It's like a loaded question, but
Yeah.
it starts with being a role model and living it and speaking it and putting it out into the universe. And guess what? Kids are sponges. They're going to want to learn. My son wants to help in the business. He's 10.
Exactly. Exactly. And you said the
They get
right.
excited about it.
They're gonna want to ask these questions. I think it's so cool. I'm thinking of a 10-year-old kid that says, my mom has businesses in Florida and Tennessee, and I mean, you name it, they're there. And that mindset, though, that mindset is, it breaks their limiting beliefs that if they would
Exactly.
have gone the ladder and just focused on where they are now, then they're just not thinking as big as they could. And that is something that you as parents can control. We are recording this in a political season where everybody wants to blame this politician and look for this politician. Why don't you start making the change? Why don't you start changing the way your household is run? Why don't you start educating your young people so we're able to grow as a society, as opposed to trying to focus on one party and the next party and all that kind of stuff. So, all that being said, I do want to be very respectful of your time. Can you just talk to people a little bit about what's next? What do you see? What's going down the pipe? What's coming down the pipeline? Where do you envision the business being in maybe 10, 15 years?
Scaling, right? So
Mhm.
once you get to so many properties, it's like you're playing Monopoly, bro.
There you go. That's a great game. That's
You
a
know what I
great
mean? You're
game.
playing Monopoly. I have
Yeah.
7 homes. I want to scale.
Yeah.
So maybe I sell a couple of my properties and buy myself a boutique hotel.
Uh-huh.
I buy a couple of properties and buy a commercial space. I mean,
That
there's
would
all
make
of these
sense.
different things that I'm always thinking about to
Yeah.
elevate, right? Because
Right.
it's like you're playing Monopoly. You have a couple of houses, you want to buy a hotel.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So my goals for 25 are to grow my team, empower others to help investors make
Mm.
wise investments. I am well known in this industry for practicing with integrity.
Mm-hmm.
I am that agent that will say more no's than yeses.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to go in any business that you're in. We always need to be going into it with the right mindset and with our hearts in the right places. I'm all about putting people over money any day, people
Yes.
over money. And I think that that's what has allowed my business to grow and grow for me. And that's why people want to work with me, because
Yes.
they see my heart, my integrity, and they know that I only want what's best.
Mhm. And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
You can find me on Facebook. My name is Madeline Blum, but my maiden name still is on there, Madeline Torres Blum. You can find me on my website. It's called realpowerhousegroup.com.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'd like to get into mentorship,
Mm-hmm.
helping our youth have more of that financial literacy,
Yes.
education background, because I think it's really important for our youth. It's kind of scary where we are with our generation, future
Yeah, it is.
generation.
It definitely is. And all that will be included in the show notes as well. So, Madeline, the final thing I do to close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are I'd say, what, sophomore in high school, Madeline. I want you to pretend that version of you is coming to the Zoom room. You're partying, you're drinking, you're skipping school, you're doing all the things that you know in your heart are wrong, but you're still doing it. Pretend that version of you has come into the Zoom room. Give her some words of encouragement, and we will officially close.
Dream big, the sky's the limit, and don't set any sort of limiting belief. Don't believe any limiting belief that you have, because we can become our own worst enemy when it comes to that. Mindset is everything, and I wish that I would have believed in that, because my life could have been so much more grander. I have a wonderful life today,
Mm.
but I think that we definitely need to dream bigger and say screw it. The worst someone can say is no, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Seize every opportunity.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That, hey, I have absolutely nothing to add to that. Again, as I told you from the beginning, you believe it or not, it is the first time we've actually met, but it feels like I've been knowing this woman for years because that's exactly what it was for me before I got out here to Florida. So all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.